Okay, which choice logically completes the text? This is going to be an inference question. I see the text we have to fill in the underlined at the end. So I'm going to get an idea from the background information as I read the whole text. I want one idea from the background information. There'll be a claim, usually in the last sentence, and I'm going to figure out what missing statement will reconcile that claim with the rest of the background information. And I'm going to use that predicted answer to find and match the correct answer. So that's a general approach to these problems. Let's go ahead and read the entire passage. Microbes that live in shallow lakes, ponds, and produce methane, a harmful gas. Ecologist such and such wanted to see how different types of shallow water plants might affect the amount of methane that escapes into the atmosphere. Okay, so microbes produce the methane gas can escape, but the plants help avoid that, if I understand this correctly. So how much is captured by the plants? Aben's team set up some water tanks with soil and microbes from local ponds. Some tanks had a type of underwater plant that grows in the soil called water milfoil. I know water milfoil. If you've ever been up to Lake George, if you're in New York and been up to Lake George in upstate New York, that's a big problem, the growth of milfoil in the very clean, clear, once drinkable water. Other tanks had either duckweed, a type of plant that floats on the water's surface, or algae. Aben and his team found that tanks with duckweed and algae released higher levels of methane than tanks with milfoil did. That's interesting. So I didn't know the milfoil captures more of the methane gas than does algae, I guess. So if we have the water, you ever seen it? Milfoil like grows up like these sort of weeds like corn or something like that underneath, kind of up to the surface. So this captures a lot of the gas, whereas if we have what I assume are kind of algae or lily pods on the surface, not much gas gets captured there. Okay. Such and such found that tanks with duckweed and algae release higher levels of methane than tanks with water milfoil. This finding suggests that milfoil underneath the water actually captures more of the methane gas that gets released from the microbes. So the microbes are down here, I assume. So the presence of some kinds of underwater plants like milfoil helps prevent methane from escaping shallow lakes and ponds. Yeah, you could assume that. It doesn't actually talk about what escapes, though. It just talks about what gets captured. So let's be careful about that. I don't think that's going to be the right answer. Shallow lakes and ponds release more methane than deeper bodies of water. No, it's not shallow versus deep. That's not really in there. Unless it specifically says milfoil only grows in the deep. Didn't really say that. And the algae only grows in shallow. It didn't say that. So that's not right. Shallow lakes and ponds are more likely to contain algae than to contain either water milfoil or duckweed. It didn't say that. So again, that's not correct. Having a mix of algae, underwater plants, and floating plants is the best way. The best way? Well, that's extreme, and it never really talks about that either. To reduce the amount of methane. So the presence of some kind of underwater plant like milfoil helps prevent methane from escaping shallow lakes and ponds. Well, why just shallow? So let's read this again. Perhaps we missed this. Microbes live in shallow lakes and ponds. Okay, so it does help prevent some shallow lakes and ponds. That's all we're talking about, only shallow lakes and ponds. By the way, Lake George is not shallow, but the area the milfoil grows is in the shallow areas. So, okay. Harmful colors that might affect the methane that escapes in that area. This team set up some water tanks, soil, to local ponds. Some tanks had a type of underwater plant that grows in the soil. That's the milfoil. Other tanks had a type of plant that floats on the surface. This team, okay, so it really didn't say anything about shallow versus deep. Shallow lakes and ponds are more likely to contain algae than to contain, no, never said one's more likely than the other. A is going to be our correct answer. The presence of some kind of underwater plants like milfoil helps prevent methane from escaping the shallow lakes. Yeah, that does seem to be true. That's kind of a valid conclusion based on the fact that duckweed and algae released higher levels of methane than tanks with the milfoil did, which suggests the milfoil actually captures the methane gas and therefore prevents the methane from escaping. So I think that's a valid conclusion. A will be correct.